Let me spell that out. Porifera. Porifera. So this phylum houses sponges. That's the only organism that belongs to phylum Porifera. Sponges. So these are the sponges. Now, all sponges are asymmetric, which means they have no symmetry. So you can't divide them into two equal mere halves and whatnot. So they are asymmetric. They have few unique characteristics. First of all, they filter feed to feed, so they filter feed, which means that they use special cells called collar cells, and scientifically those are called choanocytes. And I'll show you a PowerPoint of this, so you guys can see the spelling of all this and stuff. Choanocytes, which are the collar cells, and these are these things right here, the collar cells, choanocytes, and they have flagella, and they beat in water, which contains like algae and other stuff the sponge needs to feed on. So they beat that water in, and it absorbs through the porous epidermis, which we're going to go over in a second, the anatomy, and gets into the sponge. And then, since sponges have no organs, they have no digestive organs, digestive systems, nothing like that, which is right there. They don't have organs that digest this, so what they use is amoebocytes, which spelled out right there, amoebocytes. They digest food, so they use pseudopod. If you're familiar with amoebas, they have pseudopods and they engulf the food. So these amoebocytes engulf the food, like the algae that was squeezed in with the choanocytes, and they digest that with their pseudopods. They kind of eat it, and they take it, they move it, they take it, they transport it to parts of the sponge that need it. They release waste by taking what they've digested and releasing it out of the epidermis, which is the skin of the sponge, which we are going to talk about shortly. And then they also are vital in the exchanging of gases. Sponges also have to breathe as well. So they kind of exchange gases with the environment, and like I already said, they transport nutrients. So amoebocytes are full of things that they do. They're very important to the overall sponge. And I probably should have talked about the anatomy first, but this is the anatomy of the typical sponge. Now, there's different types of sponge, but this is the basic anatomy of all the sponges. So, first you've got the epidermis, which is this pink layer, pink kind of like scaly layer. Here, it's just the purple you see. That's the epidermis. It's a thin layer of cells. It's like paper thin, that surrounds the rest of the sponge. And when you get inside the sponge, the first thing you're going to hit is the mesohyl, or the mesenchyme, however you pronounce it. There's two different words that mean the same thing. You get into the mesohyl, which is a very jelly-like fluid that you'll see in other invertebrates. It's this mesohyl, this little yellow, spongy-looking stuff. Okay. Then you're going to have the choanocytes, or the collar cells, and you can see their flagella here. Like I said, they beat using their flagella to bring water in. And then the amoebocytes, so these little blue things that digest the food, transport it, exchange gases, release wastes, stuff like that. All of that is in this little sponge, which is pretty interesting. One more thing I want to go over is the skeleton of sponges. Now, skeletons, you can have an endoskeleton or an ectoskeleton. Endoskeletons are skeletons outside of the body. So crabs have ectoskeletons. So do insects. Their skeletons are on the outside of their bodies. What you see is their skeleton. Humans have ectoskeletons, which are skeletons inside of the body. Sponges have ectoskeletons as well. They're made of spongin or spicules, which you can't really see, but spicules are kind of like needles. They kind of look like teeth, shark teeth. They're triangular. They're shark teeth, but just skinnier. And like the little hard sponges that you'd find have spicules. The spongin is what makes the sponge like spongy. When you have a sponge in your house to clean things with, whether or not it's a real sponge, it's mimicking spongin. Sponges whose skeleton is made of spongin are very soft and squishy. And spongin is made out of proteins, complex webs of proteins. Spicules are made of calcium carbonate and silica, and they're harder because of that. Reproduction is not on the PowerPoint here, but I do want to go over it briefly. In fact, I can take you to it. Sponges in reproduction isn't really too hard to understand. They can reproduce by budding, which is asexual, which is obviously you guys should know what budding is. They can also reproduce sexually. They can release clouds of sperm and clouds of eggs. Kind of similar to coral, except they use their collar cells to produce these things. So they release the eggs and the sperm, and then eventually an egg and some sperm will meet up, and a new sponge will be born, which is what's stated right here. They can also produce a gemule, which is not that important. I don't even know if you're going to have to know that for your test. For my test, we don't, but it's included in this outline that I made here. But a gemule is kind of like a ball, like a case of bunch of sponge cells, a cluster of sponge cells that is produced in times of extreme cold temperatures. So the sponges will produce this when it's very cold. They're living in cold waters, maybe in winter, and once the temperatures resume to being favorable for the sponges to thrive in, the gemule breaks and a new sponge is born from those sponge cells. So that's all the information from phylum Cnidaria.